I stood at the airport gate, my heart racing. The attendant scanned my boarding pass again, her face scrunched up in confusion. "Ma'am, this ticket is invalid," she said. "What? That's impossible." My hands shook. Grandma Edith was dying. I had to get on that plane. "I'm sorry, but you're not in our system." Behind me, Brielle appeared, her perfect face twisted in fake concern. "Oh no, Charlotte, what happened?" "You booked this ticket," I said, my voice cracking. "You said you'd handle everything." She touched my arm softly. "I must have made a mistake. I'm so sorry." The gate agent announced final boarding. Other passengers squeezed past me. I tried to pull up my confirmation email, but my phone wouldn't load it. "Please," I begged. "My grandmother is dying." The agent shook her head. "I can't let you board without a valid ticket." The gate door closed with a heavy click. Through the window, I watched the plane pull away from the terminal. Tears blurred my vision. Brielle leaned close, her voice barely a whisper. Well, maybe it was meant to be. I turned to stare at her, but she was already walking away, her phone pressed to her ear. By the time I arrived at the hospital the next day, Grandma was gone. I rushed through the doors, still wearing yesterday's clothes. The flight I finally caught had landed just an hour ago. My chest felt like it was caving in. Logan and Brielle stood in the hallway outside Grandma's room. Logan's eyes were red, but Brielle looked perfectly put together. When she saw me, she hugged Logan tighter. "I'm so sorry you missed her," Logan said quietly. "Where's Joanne?" I asked, looking around. "She went to make arrangements," Brielle answered. "She's been such a rock for us." Joanne was Brielle's mother, and somehow she'd become the one making all the decisions about our family. I'd never understood how that happened. I walked into Grandma's room. The bed was empty, freshly made. It smelled like cleaning chemicals instead of her lavender perfume. A nurse appeared beside me. "Are you Charlotte?" I nodded, unable to speak. "She asked for you," the nurse said softly. "Right at the end, she seemed to stress that you weren't here." My knees almost gave out. I'd missed saying goodbye because of a mistake with a plane ticket. The nurse pressed something into my hand. "I found this clutched in her fingers. I think she wanted you to have it." I looked down at the crumpled sticky note. 4 words were scrawled in Grandma's shaky handwriting. "Not them. Find the red box." The funeral was held 3 days later at the church Grandma loved. I sat in the front row, feeling numb. Logan kept checking his phone. Brielle worked the room like she was at a networking event, hugging distant cousins and accepting condolences with graceful tears. Joanne stood near the casket, directing the funeral home staff. She wore an expensive black dress and diamond earrings. When I tried to ask her about Grandma's last wishes, she waved me off. "We're handling everything, Charlotte," she said coldly. "Logan and I have been discussing the estate. We need to streamline things." "Streamline?" I repeated. "The house, the accounts? It's complicated, but don't worry your head about it." I bit my tongue. This was Grandma's funeral, not the place for an argument. During the reception, I walked through Grandma's house one last time. Photos covered the walls, family memories from decades past. Then I noticed something strange. A picture from my college graduation hung in the hallway. But in the frame, I'd been cut out. The image showed Logan and our parents, but where I should have been standing, there was just empty space. My stomach turned. Someone had physically removed me from the photograph. I heard Brielle's laugh from the other room, light and carefree. She was telling someone about how much Grandma had loved her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma's note and that edited photograph. I remembered the hours I'd spent with her over the last 5 years. After my husband died, Grandma had been my anchor. I'd visit every week, sometimes more. We'd have tea and she'd tell me stories about her youth. Logan and Brielle visited maybe twice a year, always briefly. They'd show up with expensive gifts and leave within an hour. But Grandma never complained. She'd just squeeze my hand after they left and say, "Quality over quantity, dear." I thought about the red box she'd mentioned. Grandma kept important things in a locked storage box. I'd seen it years ago in the attic of her house. That house now belonged to Logan. At least, that's what Joanne had announced at the funeral. She said Grandma's will had been very clear. But something felt wrong. Why would Grandma leave me that note if everything was already settled? I grabbed my phone and called Logan. "We need to talk about Grandma's house. I said when he answered. Charlotte, it's late. I just want to look through some of her things, personal items. There was a long pause. Joanne's having an estate sale this weekend. You can come by then. An estate sale? Already? We need to move quickly, the property taxes are high. He hung up before I could argue. Saturday morning, I drove to Grandma's house. Cars lined the street. Strangers walked through her front door carrying boxes of her belongings. Joanne stood on the porch directing traffic. When she saw me, her smile tightened. Charlotte, how nice of you to come. I want to go to the attic, I said. The attic is off limits. We're still sorting up there. Please, I just want to see. This house belongs to Logan now, Joanne interrupted. We're being generous by letting you attend the sale. She turned away to help a customer. I stood there, invisible. I waited until she was distracted, then slipped inside. The house felt wrong, violated. People pawed through Grandma's china and books like they were trash. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, then found the narrow door to the attic. It creaked as I opened it. The attic was dim and dusty. I scanned the cluttered space, looking for the red metal box. There, in the corner, behind an old lamp, I pulled it out. The lock was broken, the lid bent. Someone had forced it open. Inside, there was nothing but a single piece of paper. You're too late. The handwriting wasn't Grandma's. I sat in the coffee shop across from Miss Levine, Grandma's former housekeeper. She'd worked for Grandma for 20 years before retiring last year. Thank you for meeting me, I said. Mrs. Levine stirred her tea slowly. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile. I was heartbroken when I heard about Edith, she said. She was a wonderful woman. Did she ever talk to you about her will? Mrs. Levine's eyes flickered. Why do you ask? I told her about the note, the empty box, how quickly everything was being sold off. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward. Your grandmother was worried, she whispered. About 2 months ago, she called me. She was upset. She said Joanne and Brielle had been pressuring her to change her will. Change it how? To leave everything to Logan. They told her it would be simpler, that you were already taken care of. Anger flared in my chest. That's not true. I know, dear. Edith knew too. She told me she wanted to make sure you were protected. She made a copy of her original will, the one where she left the house in trust to you. My heart stopped. Where is it? Mrs. Levine reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. She gave this to me for safekeeping. She made me promise that if anything happened, I'd give it to you. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten will. I recognized Grandma's careful cursive immediately. The document was dated 18 months ago. It clearly stated that I would inherit the house along with a trust fund Grandma had set up. Logan would receive some savings and personal items, but the bulk of the estate came to me. This is dated after the will Logan submitted to the court, I said, checking the dates again. Mrs. Levine nodded. Edith told me she'd gone to update it officially, but then she got sick. She was too weak to travel to the lawyer's office. Did she ever get it notarized? She was trying to. She had a mobile notary she used sometimes, but something happened. The appointment was canceled. I stared at the paper. This changed everything. If it was real, if I could prove it was valid. Do you know why the appointment was canceled? I asked. Edith called me that day, very upset. She said someone had talked her out of it, that it would cause too much trouble in the family. Who talked her out of it? Mrs. Levine looked down at her tea. She didn't say the name, but she mentioned Logan's new family and how they had their own ideas about what was best. I felt sick. They'd manipulated a dying woman. Thank you, I told Mrs. Levine. You don't know what this means. She patted my hand. Edith loved you very much, dear. She wanted you to be okay. The probate lawyer's office smelled like old books and coffee. Mr. Harrison reviewed the handwritten will I'd brought. He was an older man with silver hair and sharp eyes. This complicates things, he said finally. Can we use it? Potentially, if we can prove this was her true intent, and if we can demonstrate that the submitted will was procured through undue influence or fraud, then yes. How do we prove that? He leaned back in his chair. We'd need evidence. Witnesses who can testify about her mental state, about any pressure she was under. We'd need to show a timeline of when each will was created and under what circumstances. I told him about the canceled notary appointment, about Mrs. Levine's testimony, about how quickly Joanne had moved to sell everything. Mr. Harrison made notes. The speed of the estate sale is suspicious. Usually families wait longer, and the fact that they're refusing you access to the property, that's concerning. What should I do? We need to file a petition to contest the will, but I have to warn you, Charlotte, this will get ugly. These cases often tear families apart. I thought about the empty red box, the edited photograph, the lost plane ticket. My family's already torn apart, I said. I just want the truth. He nodded slowly. Then we'll need to find more evidence. Do you know anyone who might benefit from hiding the real will? The question hung in the air. I knew exactly who benefited. I tracked down the mobile notary through Grandma's old address book. Her name was Patricia Coleman, and she worked out of a small office across town. She remembered Grandma immediately. Oh yes, Edith, such a sweet lady. I worked with her a few times over the years. I'm her granddaughter. I'm trying to understand what happened to her will. Patricia's expression grew serious. I remember that. She called me about 3 weeks before she passed. She wanted to update her estate documents. What happened? We scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday. But the day before, she called to cancel. She sounded different, stressed. Did she say why she was canceling? Patricia thought for a moment. She said someone had talked her out of it, that she'd been told it would cause problems in the family if she changed things now. She seemed very upset, like she wasn't sure what to do. Did she mention who talked her out of it? No names. But she said they convinced her it wasn't necessary, that her family would work it out themselves. I felt my anger building. They'd known exactly what they were doing. Is there any record of her calling you? Any documentation? I keep appointment logs. I can pull the records if you need them. Please, I'm contesting the will that was submitted. Patricia nodded knowingly. I thought something might be wrong when I heard she'd passed. She seemed so determined when she first called. 2 weeks later, Logan called to invite me to dinner. A gesture of unity, he said awkwardly. Brielle thinks we should all sit down together, as a family. I almost laughed, but I agreed. I needed to see what they were planning. The dinner was at a fancy restaurant Joanne had chosen. She sat at the head of the table like a queen, with Logan and Brielle on either side. I took my seat quietly, playing the role of the grieving, confused widow. Charlotte, we're glad you could join us, Joanne said smoothly. We wanted to clear the air. The air seems pretty clear to me, I replied. Brielle touched Logan's hand. We know this has been hard on everyone, losing Grandma Edith. She called her grandma like they'd been close. It made my skin crawl. We think it's time to move forward, Joanne continued. The estate is settled. The house sale is progressing nicely. Perhaps it would help you to focus on your own life now. There it was, the real message. Move on. Stop asking questions. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. Joanne smiled. Good, because fighting over an estate is so ugly, and Edith wouldn't have wanted that. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead I went down the hallway where Brielle had left her purse. I knew I shouldn't, but something pushed me forward. I opened her bag and found her planner. I flipped through quickly, my heart racing. Then I saw it. 3 weeks before Grandma died, written in pencil, Charlotte's flight, blocked. My blood ran cold. I remembered Grandma mentioning a safety deposit box years ago. She'd used her maiden name, Edith Morrison. No, wait, I couldn't use Morrison. She'd used her maiden name, Edith Whitmore. I drove to the small bank where she'd kept her main accounts. I still had a key she'd given me years ago, though I'd never understood what it was for. The bank manager verified my ID and led me to the vault. Box 247. The key fit perfectly. Inside were old photographs, letters tied with string, and a small thumb drive labeled, "In case they try anything." My hands trembled as I gathered everything. The bank manager gave me a privacy room to review the contents. I plugged the thumb drive into my laptop. One video file appeared on the screen. I clicked play. Grandma's face filled the screen. She looked thinner than I remembered, frailer. This had been recorded maybe 2 months before she died. Charlotte, my dear, she began, her voice weak but clear. If you're watching this, then they did what I was afraid of. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears already forming. I want you to know the truth about my will. I had planned to leave you the house and the trust. You've been there for me when I needed someone. You have a kind heart." She coughed, gathering strength. "But Joanne and Brielle have been visiting more lately. They keep talking about simplifying things, about making sure the money stays in their family. They convinced Logan that you don't need it, that you're fine on your own." Grandma's voice continued on the video. "I tried to stand firm, but they're very persuasive. Joanne especially. She has a way of making you doubt yourself. And I'm so tired, Charlotte. I'm tired of fighting." She looked directly into the camera, her eyes sharp despite her illness. "I made a new will with a lawyer 3 years ago. That's the real one, the one I signed and had properly notarized. It leaves you the house, the trust fund, and names you as executor. I put a copy in my safety deposit box and gave another to my attorney, Mr. Chen." I paused the video. Chen was on the forbidden names list. I made a mental note. Her attorney's name would need to be something different. Mr. Parker, maybe. I'd handle that detail when writing this formally. I let the video continue. "But recently, Joanne found an older will from years ago. She's been suggesting I use that one instead. It splits things evenly between you and Logan, but names Logan as executor." Grandma leaned closer to the camera. "I need you to know this. I don't want that old will used. I want you protected. That's why I'm making this video. If something happens to me, if they try to use the wrong will, I've hidden one final copy somewhere. They'll never think to look." She smiled softly. "Remember the fireplace in the house? The one that never worked quite right? Check behind the loose brick on the left side down low. The envelope is there. Use it, dear. Fight for what's right." The video ended. I sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. Grandma had known. She'd known they would try this. I had to get back into that house. Breaking into your childhood home at midnight feels surreal. I parked down the street and approached the house quietly. The sold sign in the yard made my stomach twist. Joanne had worked fast. I used my old key. Miraculously, they hadn't changed the locks yet. Inside, the house felt empty and wrong. Most of Grandma's furniture was gone, sold to strangers. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. I went straight to the living room. The old brick fireplace stood dark and cold. I knelt down on the left side, running my hands over the bricks near the floor. One brick wiggled slightly when I pressed it. I pulled it free, my heart pounding. Behind it was a gap in the wall, and tucked inside was a sealed manila envelope. I grabbed it and replaced the brick quickly. Headlights swept across the front window. A car pulled into the driveway. I ducked down, panic flooding through me. Someone was here. I heard car doors slam, voices outside. I shoved the envelope into my jacket and ran for the back door. I slipped out just as I heard keys jingling at the front entrance. In my car, safely down the street, I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was the signed, notarized will. Grandma's signature, the lawyer's seal, 2 witness signatures. Everything official and legal. The date was 3 years ago, after the version Logan had submitted to the court. This was it. This was proof. Harrison reviewed the will carefully, comparing it to the one Logan had filed. "This is significant, Charlotte. This will is properly executed, witnessed, and notarized. The date clearly supersedes the will currently in probate. So we can use it?" "Absolutely. The notary's stamp matches state records. The witnesses can be verified. This is a legally binding document." Relief washed over me. Finally, something solid. "But I need to prepare you," Mr. Harrison continued. "When we file this, there will be immediate pushback. Joanne and her family will fight hard. They'll question the document's authenticity, your motives, everything. Let them fight." He nodded approvingly. "We'll need to file a formal petition to set aside the current will and probate this one instead. We'll present all your evidence, the video, witness testimony, the timeline of events. How long will it take? Months, potentially. These cases move slowly, but with what you've gathered, I'm confident we have a strong case." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Charlotte, are you absolutely certain you want to do this? These battles get nasty. They'll attack your character, your relationship with your grandmother, everything." I thought about the plane ticket, the edited photograph, Grandma clutching that note as she died. "I'm ready," I said, "for whatever comes." "Then we file tomorrow, and after that?" He smiled grimly. "We get ready for war." I played my part perfectly for the next 2 weeks. When Brielle called to chat about family healing, I was sweet and agreeable. When Logan mentioned selling some of Grandma's jewelry, I said it sounded reasonable. Joanne called once to ask if I'd found closure yet. I told her yes, that I was moving forward with my life. "That's wonderful, Charlotte," she said, relief clear in her voice. "We were worried you might do something foolish, like contest the will." "Oh no," I lied smoothly. "I understand Grandma wanted things kept simple." Behind the scenes, Mr. Harrison filed our petition with the court. We submitted the later will, the video recording, and Mrs. Levine's written statement. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for 3 weeks out. I kept playing dumb, letting them think I'd given up. Brielle even invited me to lunch to celebrate new beginnings. I went, smiled, ordered salad, and listened to her talk about the vacation she and Logan were planning with their inheritance money. "You should treat yourself too," she said. "Maybe take a trip? Get away from all these sad memories?" I nodded along, sipping my water. In my purse, I had a copy of the court filing. They'd received their official notice in 2 days. I couldn't wait to see their faces. The notice hit them like a bomb. Joanne showed up at my apartment 3 days later, her face twisted with rage. I'd never seen her composure crack before. "How dare you?" she hissed at my doorstep. I leaned against the doorframe, calm. "I'm just ensuring Grandma's real wishes are followed. That will is fraudulent. We'll prove it." The notary disagrees. So does the law firm that drafted it. Her hand trembled slightly. She was scared. I could see it now. All her careful planning was unraveling. "You ungrateful." She stopped herself, breathing hard. "We took care of Edith. We were there." "You were there to manipulate her," I said quietly, "to pressure her into changing her will, to keep me from saying goodbye." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Brielle's planner. Charlotte's flight blocked. Should I submit that as evidence too?" Her face went pale. "You're making things up." "Am I? Because I have quite a lot of documentation now. Witnesses. Recordings, a very clear timeline of how you and your daughter worked to isolate a dying woman from her granddaughter." Joanne stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. "Once, it might have worked, but not anymore. You've always been weak, Charlotte, a pushover. Everyone knows it." I smiled coldly. "You've always underestimated me. That's why I'm going to win." She stared at me, seeing me clearly for the first time. "This isn't over," she spat. "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." I spent the next week digging through Grandma's financial records that I'd requested from the bank. Most transactions were normal: utilities, groceries, medical bills. But then I found something strange. 2 days before Grandma died, there was a withdrawal from her checking account. $5,000. The signature on the withdrawal slip was supposedly Grandma's, but I knew Grandma's handwriting. In her final weeks, her hand had shaken so badly she could barely hold a pen. Her signatures looked wobbly, uncertain. This signature was smooth, steady, perfect. I compared it to other documents I had. The difference was obvious. Someone had forged Grandma's signature to take money from her account while she was dying. I checked who had power of attorney at that time. Logan had been granted limited POA for medical decisions a month before her death. But financial POA? That hadn't been established. I made copies of everything and scheduled another meeting with Mr. Harrison. This was bigger than I'd thought. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was a fraud. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Joanne, Logan, and Brielle sat on one side with their lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Anderson. I sat with Mr. Harrison on the other. The judge, a woman in her 60s, named Judge Morrison. No, I couldn't use that name either. Judge Patterson. She reviewed our filings with a neutral expression. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine if the petition has merit," she explained. "We're not making final decisions today." Joanne's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is clearly a case of a bitter relative trying to overturn a legitimate will out of greed. The will my client submitted was properly executed 2 years ago. And yet," Mr. Harrison countered, "the will we've submitted is dated 3 years ago, is properly notarized, and has video testimony from the deceased explaining her true intentions." I sat quietly, my hands folded. I'd been coached to look calm, respectful, and honest. Brielle whispered something to Logan. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting around the room. The judge asked several questions about the timeline, the witnesses, and the documents. I answered clearly when addressed, sticking to facts. Anderson tried to paint me as someone who'd manipulated Grandma in her final years, playing on her emotions after my husband died. Actually, I said calmly when given the chance to respond, I can provide phone records, visit logs from the nursing facility, and testimony from multiple staff members about my regular presence in Grandma's life. Joanne's smile flickered. Judge Patterson made some notes. I'm going to allow this case to proceed. There are enough questions here to warrant a full hearing. We'll reconvene in 6 weeks for evidence presentation. As we left, Joanne's expression had gone from confident to worried. Logan wouldn't meet my eyes. 3 days before the full hearing, Mr. Harrison submitted Grandma's handwritten letter as evidence. I'd found it tucked in with the photos from the safety deposit box. It was dated a week before she died, addressed to whomever handles my estate. The letter read, I, Edith Whitmore, am writing this in sound mind despite my failing body. I want to make clear that my true will is the one I created 3 years ago with Mr. Parker's law firm. If anyone presents a will dated April of 2 years ago, please know that I was coerced into creating that document under emotional pressure from family members who did not have my best interests at heart. My granddaughter Charlotte has been my faithful companion through the hardest years of my life. She deserves the security I've tried to provide her. Please honor my true wishes. If you're reading this, it means someone tried to go against what I wanted. Don't let them win. The signature was shaky but unmistakably hers. Mr. Harrison attached medical records showing Grandma's mental competency at the time the letter was written. 2 nurses had witnessed her writing it. When the judge read it during the hearing, I watched Joanne's face drain of color. This is a photocopy, Anderson argued. We can't verify authenticity. The original is in a sealed evidence bag, Mr. Harrison replied, and we have the nurses who witnessed it ready to testify. The judge looked troubled. I'm ordering an independent investigation into the circumstances surrounding both wills. This hearing is continued pending that review. As we filed out, Logan pulled me aside in the hallway. Charlotte, please, can we talk? We sat in a coffee shop down the street from the courthouse. Logan looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, his clothes rumpled. He'd always been the polished one, the successful one. Joanne's been calling constantly, he said. And Brielle, she's furious with me. Why? He laughed bitterly. Because I'm cracking. Because I can't keep lying anymore. I waited, saying nothing. The will we submitted. Joanne pushed Grandma to sign it. She convinced her that leaving everything to me was simpler, fairer. That you had your husband's life insurance and didn't need help. I used that money to pay off medical bills, I said quietly. I'm barely making ends meet. I didn't know, Joanne said. He stopped. It doesn't matter what she said. I should have asked you myself. What about the notary appointment? The one Grandma canceled. Logan rubbed his face. Brielle convinced Grandma it would start a family war, that you'd feel hurt and left out if the will was changed again. She made it sound like she was protecting you. And the plane ticket? He looked up sharply. What? Brielle blocked my flight. I found it written in her planner. She made sure I couldn't say goodbye to Grandma. His face went pale. No, she wouldn't. She did. We sat in silence. I could see him processing everything, realizing how deep the manipulation had gone. What about the $5,000, I asked. The withdrawal 2 days before Grandma died? Logan's expression changed to confusion. What withdrawal? I showed him the bank statement. His eyes widened as he recognized the signature. That's not Grandma's writing, he whispered. That's... Someone forged it, I finished. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. I need to talk to my lawyer. I need to tell them everything. 2 days later, the investigation turned up something unexpected. A donation had been made from Grandma's account to a charity Joanne sat on the board of, except Grandma had never approved it. The donation was for $10,000, made 1 month before Grandma died. The signature was forged. The investigators traced the transaction. The money had been funneled through the charity and then paid out to consulting fees to a company owned by Brielle. It was embezzlement, clean and simple. When confronted, Joanne claimed it was a misunderstanding. That Grandma had verbally approved the donation. But the bank had security footage. It showed Brielle at the bank, not Grandma. Brielle submitting the withdrawal slip with the forged signature. The police were notified. Fraud charges were filed. Joanne's assets were frozen pending investigation. Her name disappeared from the charity's board overnight. The scandal hit the local papers. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling oddly numb. Logan filed for divorce. He'd moved out of the house he shared with Brielle and was staying with a friend. Brielle called me once, crying. I didn't answer. Then she showed up at my apartment. The court hearing was packed with people. Media had gotten wind of the embezzlement charges, and now the will contest had become a public spectacle. I sat calmly as Mr. Harrison presented our evidence. The timeline was devastating. Grandma's original will, properly executed 3 years ago. The video testimony explaining her fears, the letter warning about coercion, Mrs. Levine's testimony about the canceled notary appointment, the forged withdrawal slip, the donation fraud, Brielle's planner with Charlotte's flight blocked, Logan's confession about the pressure tactics Anderson tried to fight back, but he had nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. Joanne sat rigid in her seat, her face a mask, but I could see the cracks. Her hands trembled slightly. Her eyes darted around the courtroom like she was looking for an escape. Brielle kept whispering to her mother, but Joanne ignored her. The judge reviewed everything carefully. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of papers. Finally, Judge Patterson spoke. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I find that the will submitted by Logan's legal team was obtained through undue influence and coercion of the deceased. The will submitted by Charlotte, dated 3 years ago, is declared the valid last will and testament of Edith Whitmore. She paused, looking at Joanne and Brielle. Furthermore, I'm referring the evidence of forgery and fraud to the District Attorney's Office for criminal review. This court finds sufficient cause to believe crimes were committed. The gavel came down. I'd won. The fallout was swift and brutal. Joanne's name was dragged through the papers. Society matron charged with elder fraud, read one headline. Her friends abandoned her. The clubs she belonged to quietly asked her to resign. She was ousted from every board she sat on. Logan officially filed for divorce from Brielle. In his filing, he cited fraud, manipulation, and criminal behavior. The house he'd thought was his went back to me. The trust fund was released. I was named executor, just as Grandma had wanted. Brielle tried calling multiple times. I blocked her number. Then, 2 weeks after the judgment, she appeared at my door. She looked different. No makeup, sweatpants, and a wrinkled t-shirt. Her eyes were red and puffy. Please, she said. Can we talk? I almost closed the door, but something made me stop. You have 5 minutes. She followed me inside, wringing her hands nervously. I know you hate me, she started. And you have every right to. But Charlotte, I'm begging you. Drop the criminal charges. I'll give you anything. We can split the estate. I'll testify against my mother. Whatever you want. I studied her face, looking for genuine remorse. I didn't find it. You stole my goodbye, I said quietly. You blocked my flight so I couldn't be there when Grandma died. Do you have any idea what that did to me? She started crying. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I sat down across from Brielle, maintaining distance. Your mother taught you well, I said. How to manipulate, how to lie, how to take what doesn't belong to you. No, You targeted a dying woman. You isolated her from the one person who actually loved her. And you did it all for money. Brielle's tears fell harder. I didn't think it through. Joanne said it would be simple. That you wouldn't notice. That you'd be fine. Do I look fine to you? She had no answer. You know what hurts most? I continued. Grandma asked for me at the end. The nurse told me. She was distressed that I wasn't there. She died thinking I'd abandoned her. Charlotte, because of you. Because you lost my ticket. Because you couldn't stand the thought of me having something you wanted. I stood up, walking to the door. I'm not dropping the charges. You committed fraud. You stole from a dying woman. You deserve whatever consequences come. Please. I have nothing left. Logan left me. My mother won't talk to me. Everyone knows what I did. Good, I said coldly. Then maybe you'll finally understand what consequences feel like. I opened the door. Get out. She stood slowly, her face crumpling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, you're not. You're just sorry you got caught. I closed the door in her face. The final hearing took place on a sunny Tuesday morning. The judge awarded me full control of Grandma's estate. The house, the trust fund, all of it. Everything Grandma had wanted me to have. Joanne received a 5-year sentence for fraud and forgery, though she was out on appeal. Brielle got 2 years probation and community service, plus restitution. Logan and I had coffee afterward. Our relationship was damaged, maybe permanently, but he'd done the right thing in the end. "I'm sorry," he said for the 100th time. "I should have seen what was happening." "You should have," I agreed. "But you chose your wife and her mother over your own family. That's something you'll have to live with." He nodded sadly. I decided to keep the house. It needed work, but it was full of memories, good ones, from before everything went wrong. I donated half of the trust fund to women's shelters in Grandma's name. She would have liked that, helping women who needed support, who'd been underestimated and overlooked. Like she'd helped me. On the courthouse steps, I ran into Joanne one last time. She was leaving her appeal hearing, looking diminished in her orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Our eyes met. She opened her mouth to speak, but her lawyer pulled her along. As she passed, she muttered, "We didn't think you'd fight." I stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "That's why I won," I said clearly. She paused, the words hitting her. Then the officers led her away. I walked to my car, pulling out my phone. I had a voicemail from the Historical Society. They wanted to talk about preserving Grandma's house as a landmark. I smiled. Grandma would have loved that. As I drove away from the courthouse, I thought about Grandma's note. Not them. Find red box. 4 simple words that changed everything. 4 words that helped me find my strength. 4 words that brought justice. I'd found the box. I'd found the truth. And I'd found myself. Grandma had given me one last gift. Not just an inheritance, but the courage to fight for what was right. And I'd never forget it.